Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to do a beer that is half American, half Swedish. For the American side of the beer, it's another brewery that I've never encountered before, and for the Swedish side it's a brewery that I've had a good few reviews from. So for the American side we are going to go to Elmsford in New York State, and we're having a taste of my first ever beer from Captain Lawrence Brewing Company. Now these guys seem to have come over here to Sweden fairly recently. They're selling their beers in Sigtuna Brygghus. They have a grapefruit IPA that I'll maybe see if I can review for you in the future, but the Swedish side of the beer of course is Sigtuna Brygghus, who are from just a little bit to the north of Stockholm. Sigtuna of course is Sweden's oldest town. This beer is called Hops N Sap. It's an IPA, a New England type IPA, coming in at 8% ABV, and it's dry hopped with citron mosaic and infused with birch, and it's the first time I've ever come across an IPA that is infused with birch, so very interested to see how this one turns out actually. But this was one of the small partiers that we had, I believe, on the 17th of August 2018, so a one-off batch, and so it's, you know, it's one of these ones that you just have to get when it comes up, because it's very rare that you'll actually get something from this brewery over in Europe. So hopefully it's a good beer, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this one. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, it's the link to my future reviews that hopefully I can do from Captain Lawrence Brewing. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, of course. There's a link to my reviews that I've already done from Sigtuna Brygghus. No doubt you will see more added to that in the near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beers based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers for different countries. There is one there for the American beers that I've reviewed for you, and one for the Swedish beers as well. This one will appear in both of course, since it is it's a half and half beer. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then. We'll kick off with Captain Lawrence Brewing Company, since they're the home brewery for this one. So as I mentioned to you, Captain Lawrence Brewing Company are based in Elmsford in New York, and they were founded back in 2006 by Scott Vaccaro, who had been a home brewer since 1995. So apparently he saw a friend's dad brewing beer one time, and he asked if he could join in, and he was told if his parents said yes, they were quite happy to. So he actually brewed his first beer before he could drink. In America, of course, they have that ridiculously high drinking age of 21. But Scott went to university to study accountancy, but found he just wasn't really particularly interested in it. So he transferred to the University of California at Davis and studied fermentation science, and interned at the Adnams Brewery in England during his time there. Following his graduation, he went to work for the Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, of course one of America's pioneering craft breweries, I guess you could say, one of the first really big ones, and then he went to work for the now defunct Colorado Brewery in Danbury in Connecticut as well. But the first brewery that Captain Lawrence Brewing Company had was on Castleton Street in Pleasantville in New York. This one had a 20 barrel system, and they stayed there for their first 5 years before needing to expand, which took them to their current location in Elmsford, New York, which is it's only about 5 miles away actually from their old brewery. But they started brewing there in 2011, and this place is equipped with a 40 barrel system, and they also have a smaller 7 barrel kit which they use for pilot brews, for experimental batches and all of these kind of things. And of course they've got a far higher fermentation capacity there as well. But on site they've also got their beer hall, restaurant and tap room that you can visit, and I think they do brewery tours and stuff like that as well. But they've got quite an interesting selection of beers there on the website and things, so they're definitely worth checking out. This is one of the few beers I've reviewed from New York. I think I've had one involving Other Half, and that's the only one that comes to mind at the moment that I've reviewed on the channel that is also from New York State. So that's something I definitely need to fix. I need to get back out to New York and visit my friends in kind of North Jersey and in the New York area at some point soon, because it's been 8 years or so since I was over in America last time, and you know there's a lot of really good beer over there, so I need to make sure that I get out there fairly soon, and hopefully I can get up to Elmsford and visit Captain Lawrence at some point. It's a little bit to the north of New York City. I guess it's maybe an hour's drive or something like that, but yeah, no, so a brewery that you definitely want to check out. They've got some really interesting stuff. If you get the chance, have a taste of some of their beers and see how you get on. But that's all you need to know about Captain Lawrence Brewing Company for just now. Let's move on to Sigtuna Brygghus then. So as I've told you before, Sigtuna Brygghus were founded back in 2005 by Peter Force, and he was joined in the early stages by David Meadows and Håkan Lundgren. So the brewery is located in Arlandastad, which is actually very close to Stockholm Arlanda Airport, and they brewed their first batch of beer back in 2006, and in the early days they were only producing around 600 gallons of beer per week. Initially though, they wanted to brew mainly historical recipes, but more recently they've been experimenting and brewing the modern styles of beer, if you like. One of the interesting ones I had from them actually was the Black Soil IPA, which was really quite interesting. I really enjoyed that beer. But for the first few years the three were happy just kind of hobby brewing, but their beers proved to be really popular, and so they upscaled their brewery and hired more staff in 2009. In 2013 they surpassed the 1 million litres of beer brewed mark, and they now have 12 employees and a 3,000 litre per brew capacity, meaning that they can brew over 1 million litres of beer per year. The brewing team is apparently 4 men strong, and they're expanding further to meet demand for their export of beers as well. They have recently started exporting their beers, but the brewery is also home to St Erik's Brewery as well, which is Jessica Heydrich that brews there, and they've been a guest brewery at Sigtuna I think since 2010, and Mohawk Brewing Company, who are a gypsy brewer if you like. They also brew a number of beers there as well, and they do some really... Mohawk Brewing are very good at imperial stouts, and I always found that Jessica Heydrich, she's very good at brewing some of the traditional German styles of beer. So both of those breweries you want to check out as well, but Sigtuna Brygghus are really making a name for themselves these days. They've got some really quite nice beers. They're quite good gateway beers to some of the really big craft beers, I would say, but they do some really interesting experimental stuff themselves as well. I would say the best beer I've had from them, I think, is probably the Black Soil IPA, but I do need to make sure I review some of their other ones as well. I think they're an organic brewery as well, from what I remember. They do some really interesting stuff in that regard. But yeah, quite a well-known Swedish craft brewery these days, and one that you should check out, particularly the Black Soil IPA, I would say, and named of course after Sweden's oldest town. So yeah, Sigtuna of course is definitely worth visiting too. So yeah, that's all you need to know about Sigtuna Brygghus. If you want to learn more about either brewery, of course, check out the brewery websites in the description below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that, and keep up to date with the latest goings on too. But let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself. So like I mentioned at the start of the video, this one is an 8% New England IPA, dry hop with citron mosaic and infused with birch as well, so it should be really quite interesting. This one of course is 1 US pint, so it's 473 millilitres. You can see that on the side there. I don't get why they, the Americans have never changed to the metric system. It's something I find very strange. They've got all these things like quarts and fluid ounces and all that, but there's a quick look at the artwork for you on this one before we open it up. There at the top you can see Sigtuna Brygghus' symbol. There's the Captain Lawrence Brewing Company symbol, and yeah, if you recycle this one in Scandinavia you get 1 krona back, which I guess is probably the equivalent of about 10 or 15 cents in the US or something like that. But without further ado, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. There we are. So you can smell some of these nice kind of fruity notes coming out of this beer already. A little bit of mango I think, which will be the citra, and some kind of orangey, tangerine kind of qualities, which will be the mosaic. My voice is starting to go actually, it's a little bit annoying. But yeah, as you can see, this beer's poured really nicely. You can see this one, it's poured a big... Oh, you do get a little bit of that woody note coming out of it as well as you move it around. But yeah, as you can see with this beer, it's poured a nice bright yellow colour. That one is fully hazy. If I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see it's completely opaque. There's not really much transparency to it at all. You can see there's a solid finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head on this one, not even slightly creamy. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and quite a few little ones just heading up towards the bottom of that head there. But it looks pretty much as you would expect from one of these New England IPAs. Really nice looking beer, and as I say, as you move it around you really can get that little bit of woody element just coming out of the aroma, but you get the nice juicy hops as well. So let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on. Oh yeah, that's really interesting actually. The thing that's striking me about this beer is, the malt base. I'm a big fan of when you have an IPA. I like a good bit of hoppiness, but I do like a good malt base to back it up. There's a lot of breweries these days just going all out for, bitterness and things like that. But this one, I think, going by the aroma, I suspect this beer will be really quite well balanced in its flavour, because the malt base has a good presence in the aroma. So with this one, you're getting that typical wheaty sort of bready quality. The aroma in this one's almost a little bit doughy actually. It almost has a little bit of that slightly Belgian-y dough presence, but very mild, not anywhere near the strength that you get from the likes of a triple or a blonde or something like that. The quadruples and doubles, of course, are quite different. But yeah, it's definitely got a nice wheaty sort of bready presence to it. You can smell some of that oaty creaminess. And like I was saying, when you're a bit further away from it, if you just waft the beer, you do, you know, the ammonia waft, as I like to call it. You know, ammonia used to burn the nostrils off of us in the chemistry lab. But if you do the ammonia waft with this one, you can definitely get that sort of woody quality to it. And you can smell that it's quite nicely infused, actually. I don't know, I'm not so sure about the distinctive aroma differences between wood, if that makes sense. But you can definitely smell there is a good little bit of a woody presence to this one. But yeah, it does smell really nice. The malt base in this one goes together very nicely. There's maybe a little bit of a biscuity quality to the beer as well. In terms of the hoppiness, it's more leaning towards the fruity, juicy side of things, this one. There's a bit of a tangerine note in there. You can definitely pick up a little bit of a blueberry quality as well. Definitely a little bit of that. That'll be the mosaic. You know, the mosaic, it gives you tangerines, but you also get at the back of it, you get these lovely kind of blueberry notes, and you can pick up the mangoes from the citra as well. There's maybe a little bit of a sort of lychee kind of character, maybe a bit of lime, because you can get a little bit of that complexity, if you like, from the citra hop as well. It's mainly mangoes, but then at the back of the flavour, at the end of the flavour, it kind of becomes this sort of lychee. You can sometimes get a bit of lemon lime, sometimes gooseberries as well, actually. But yeah, it smells really nice. In terms of the sort of floral grassy side of the hops as well, this one's definitely more of a grassy, it's definitely got more of a grassy presence to it, but there's a little touch of floral quality in there, but definitely more of a kind of grassy presence. So overall, the aroma in this one for me leans a little bit towards the malty side of things, but you've got a nice bit of juicy fruity quality in there from the hops as well. So as I always say, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But let's have a taste of this one now. So this one is the Hops N Sap, a New England IPA, 8%, very close to double IPA territory, I would have thought, actually, but it's brewed with Citra and Mosaic, infused with birch, from Captain Lawrence Brewing Co in Elmsford, New York, and Sigtuna Brygghus from Sigtuna near Stockholm here in Sweden. So let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's a really solid beer, that. First impression, just it's really nice and really solid. This one, the birch, it comes out a little bit more in the aftertaste. I've only taken one sip, right enough, but the birch comes out in the aftertaste, and it really is a kind of interesting infusion. It's really interesting how it comes out. It's kind of, if you go in from the outer edge of your tongue, you can feel that birchy, that woody quality just kind of sitting there, and it's just really interesting how that comes out, actually. I mean, otherwise, it's everything that you would expect from the sort of New England type IPA. It's got everything. I mean, the middle. Let's start on the malt base then. Middle of your palate, you can feel a little bit of that kind of pale malty quality there. That just blankets the middle of your tongue. On top of that, it starts to become a little bit more bready. I do think there's maybe a little bit of a wheat malt in there, and then you get the creamy oaty notes just sitting on top of that. A little bit of a biscuity sweetness there, going down the middle of your palate as well, which is really nice. But yeah, really nice. The way that the woody quality is infused into this one is really interesting. You can just feel it pushing its way out as you go further and further into the aftertaste. But I will say on this one, I think the thing that's really sticking out to me on this beer is the quality of the malt base. I like it. It's very well blended together. It's got a nice creaminess to it. It's got a nice smoothness to it, and it has a bit of sweetness as well. I've always said with IPAs, I have been recently starting to miss the West Coast ones with that little bit of caramelly quality to them. But this one, it has the oaty qualities in the beer. It has that little bit of almost sweetness to it. It's got a little bit of an almost biscuity quality. You just get a little bit of that biscuity note right in the middle of your palate, actually, and I like how that comes across. But yeah, it's nicely done, this beer. I mean, if you can get a hold of this one, have a go at it, because it is really nice, and for me it's the malt base that's kind of standing out on this one. On the hoppy side of things, back corners of the palate, there's a little bit of earthiness there. As you come further forward along the sides of the tongue, you've got a nice, slightly floral, aromatic quality. It's not too heavy in terms of bitterness. Overall, I'd guess that this beer is maybe about 40-50 IBUs at most. But it's got a nice little bit of that hoppy bitterness there. You've got a little bit of the grassy quality as you go round the front curve of the palate, and of course just behind the front curve of the tongue, that's where you get that little oily bubble coming out, where you get the fruity, juicy esters. It's just a little bit of mouthfeel there. But for me, the fruitiness in this one, the mangoes are kind of forming the linchpin of the beer. On top of that, you start to get a little bit of the kind of tangerine orange notes from the mosaic as well. And then as you go further into the aftertaste, right on the very tip of your tongue, I think there's a kind of blueberry note there, and there's some sort of lychees mixed in with it as well, which is interesting. Yeah. The lychees and blueberries are kind of coming out quite nicely on this one, just towards the front of the tongue. There's maybe even a little hint of a gooseberry in there. The sort of limey notes that I was picking up in the aroma, I don't think they're coming out in this one too much. I think it is more of a kind of a gooseberry flavour with this. But yeah, mangoes are the mainstay. Bit of that tangerine orange that you expect from the mosaic, blueberries, lychees. And I think just a little touch of gooseberry in there as well. But overall, everything in this beer goes together really nice. I'm finding that as I'm getting further and further into this one, the woody quality is starting to come towards the front of the palate a little bit more as well. Always, when it comes to Scotch ales and things like that, you always find you get that woody, nutty quality just towards the front of your tongue, behind where the fruits are coming out. But that woody quality in there, it's coming out, it really does come out a bit more on the aftertaste. You know, you get the breadiness kind of sitting there, but you really start it, I guess when you're actually in the front part of the flavour of this beer, when you're in the first part of the flavour profile, it's more subdued in favour of other things. But as the kind of oatiness and breadiness just kind of starts to fade away a little bit into the aftertaste, that's when you really notice the woody qualities in this beer. And it's really interesting. It works, it definitely works. But yeah, this is the first time I've come across one of these New England IPAs that's birch infused. You can really pick it out just on the inside of the edge of your tongue. But you know, thumbs up to both breweries involved here. They've produced a really nice and quite interesting beer. It's got a little different edge to it, and I have to say that I like the malt base on this one, because I do miss the fact, you know, I do miss the IPAs having a bit of sweetness to them to back up the nice hops. I think it just adds another dimension to the beer. I always said the same about black IPAs as well. They had to be imperial and just have a little bit of that that caramel note to them to really give them that complexity. But this beer does it in a different way, and it definitely works. In terms of the mouthfeel, mid-bodied beer, I think. Carbonation's very smooth. It's got a little bit of an oily character to it, this one, which is interesting. Normally the New England IPAs are quite creamy. It does have a little bit of that, but it's quite well balanced between creaminess and oiliness, and I like that about it. In terms of hoppy bitterness, like I said, there's a good little bit of that there. I think around 40 or 50 IBUs to this one. I'd be surprised if it was more than that. Nice juicy fruits like we were talking about as well. And like I say, the malt base has a really good balance between that creaminess that you expect of the New England IPA, but it's got a little bit of sweetness, and that's helped, I think, by the slightly oily quality that the beer has as well. So if you get the chance to try this one, I highly recommend that you do. It's a very interesting beer. I think this would be a shame if it's only a one-off brew, but I'd love to try some of the other things from Captain Lawrence and see what they're doing. But a great beer, and I'm glad that I got to review this one. Cool to review my first beer from Captain Lawrence Brewery as well. So hopefully it's not the last one, but let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Check out my social media. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Sigtuna and from Captain Lawrence Brewery as well. But yeah, really interesting beer, this one, and I'm glad that I got to review this. Thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. This was the Hops N Sap, a collaboration beer between Captain Lawrence Brewing Company from Elmsford in New York State and Sigtuna Brygghus from Sigtuna, just to the north of Stockholm here in Sweden. Until the next time, it's Lance just now, and I will catch you guys very soon. Skål!